The day my own son smiled while signing the papers that sent me to a nursing home was the day he believed he had already won. He thought I was a confused old man whose mind was slipping. He thought he would soon own every house I had built, every investment I had made, and every pound I had saved over 50 years of hard work. What he didn't know was that I had changed one document 6 months earlier. By the time he discovered the truth, it would be too late to undo the biggest mistake of his life. My name is Harold. I'm 74 years old, and every penny I ever owned came from years of sweat, sacrifice, and 18-hour workdays. I wasn't born rich. I grew up in a tiny farmhouse where my father taught me one lesson over and over. Nobody owes you anything, son. If you want a better life, build it yourself. I took those words seriously. By 35, I owned a successful construction company. By 50, I had invested wisely in rental properties. By 65, I had enough wealth that I could retire comfortably without worrying about money ever again. My wife, Eleanor, had been beside me through every struggle. She balanced the books while I managed projects. She raised our children while I worked overtime. She was my partner in every sense of the word. Then cancer took her. Losing Eleanor destroyed me. The house became painfully quiet. Every room reminded me of her laugh. Our children visited after the funeral, promising they would always be there for me. Those promises didn't last long. I had 2 children. My daughter, Sarah, was kind, hardworking, and independent. She became a school teacher because she genuinely loved helping children. She never asked me for money. If anything, she always tried to pay for dinner whenever we went out together. Then there was my son, Michael. Michael had always been different. Growing up, he wanted everything immediately. The newest toys, the newest car, the biggest allowance. Whenever I said no, my wife would quietly tell me, "He's young. He'll grow out of it." Unfortunately, he never did. As an adult, Michael changed jobs every year. Nothing was ever his fault. Every boss was unfair. Every business partner cheated him. Every failed investment was someone else's responsibility. Yet somehow, he always managed to arrive at my doorstep asking for another loan. "Dad, just until I get back on my feet." It was always temporary. It was never temporary. Over 20 years, I loaned him enough money to buy 3 houses. He paid back almost none of it. Sarah noticed. "Dad," she told me gently one afternoon, "you're helping him stay irresponsible." "I know. Then why keep doing it?" "Because he's my son." She sighed. "I just hope he loves you as much as you love him." I wanted to believe he did. Then Michael married Linda. If Michael loved money, Linda worshipped it. The first time she visited my house, she didn't compliment the garden Eleanor had spent years growing. She didn't admire the family photographs. She walked slowly through every room, calculating. "Wow," she said, "this place must be worth a fortune." That sentence stayed with me. Over the following years, she constantly asked questions. "How many rental properties do you own? Who's managing your investments? Have you updated your will recently?" At first, I laughed it off. Eventually, it started making me uncomfortable. Then the phone calls became less frequent. Birthdays were forgotten. Father's Day became a quick text message. Christmas visits lasted exactly long enough to collect expensive gifts. Meanwhile, Sarah still visited every Saturday. She brought homemade soup. She fixed things around the house. She never stayed because she wanted something. She stayed because she loved me. One evening she looked worried. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Has Michael been asking questions about your finances?" I hesitated. "A few." She looked down. I overheard Linda talking at a family barbecue. "What did she say?" Sarah swallowed hard. "She said the sooner you stopped living alone, the sooner they'd finally be able to enjoy your money." Silence filled the room. I wanted to dismiss it. Instead, something inside me broke. A week later, I quietly contacted my solicitor. "I'm not changing my will because I'm dying," I explained. "I'm changing it because I'm finally seeing people clearly." He nodded. "Happens more often than you'd think." Over several meetings, we completely rewrote everything. No one knew. Not Sarah. Not Michael. Nobody. Months passed. Then I slipped while cleaning leaves from the front steps. I fractured my hip. It wasn't life-threatening. Doctors expected a full recovery. But while I was still in hospital, Michael suddenly transformed into the perfect son. Dad! He rushed into my room, carrying flowers. You gave us such a scare. Linda hugged me. We've been so worried. It was almost convincing. Almost. They insisted on handling my bills. They collected my mail. They took my house keys for safekeeping. Every conversation, somehow, returned to one subject. You shouldn't live alone anymore. I'm recovering. But what if you fall again? I'll hire help. That's expensive. I smiled slightly. I can afford it. Their expressions changed for just a second, long enough for me to notice. Once I returned home, Michael became strangely persistent. He visited nearly every day. Dad, we found a wonderful assisted living community. I'm staying here, but it's dangerous. No, Linda joined in. We're only thinking about your safety. I looked directly at her. Really? She forced another smile. Of course. Then came a family meeting. Michael invited several relatives. 2 cousins, an uncle, even my church pastor. I thought it was unusual. Instead, it became an ambush. Michael stood up holding several documents. Dad, we're worried about you. I'm fine. You've forgotten appointments. I missed one. You've become confused. I have not. Linda sighed dramatically. We love you. My uncle nodded. Harold, sometimes we don't see our own decline. I stared around the room. They had rehearsed this. Michael slid papers toward me. If you move in a Rosewood Nursing Center, you'll receive excellent care. I'm not signing anything. His smile disappeared. Why are you being difficult? Because I'm capable of making my own decisions. He leaned closer. Dad, if you refuse, we may have to seek guardianship. The room went silent. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Guardianship? They were trying to declare me incapable. Sarah suddenly stood. This is wrong. Michael snapped. Stay out of this. No. She looked directly at everyone. My father doesn't belong in a nursing home. Linda rolled her eyes. You're emotional. Sarah answered calmly. No, I'm honest. For the first time in my life, I realized my own son wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to remove me. 2 weeks later, after endless pressure, doctor shopping, and carefully twisted stories about my health, they succeeded in convincing enough people that assisted living was best. I packed one small suitcase. As I left my home, I turned around one final time. Michael put his arm around Linda and whispered something. They smiled. They thought they had won. They had no idea that 6 months earlier, I had already prepared for exactly this day, and the real surprise wasn't sitting in my suitcase. It was locked inside my solicitor's office, waiting for the perfect moment. The first night inside Rosewood Nursing Center, I barely slept. It wasn't because the staff were unkind. In fact, they were wonderful. It was because I couldn't stop thinking about how my own son had smiled while watching strangers wheel me into a place I never wanted to live. Every family visits someone they love with sadness. Michael visited me with excitement. That alone told me everything I needed to know. 3 days later, he arrived carrying a stack of papers. Dad, he said cheerfully, there are just a few documents we need signed. I adjusted my glasses. What kind of documents? Oh, nothing major. I looked at the first page. Power of attorney. The second, permission to sell my primary residence. The third, authorization to manage all financial assets. I slowly looked up. You expect me to sign these? Linda forced a sympathetic smile. We're only trying to help. I don't need help managing my money. Michael's voice became firmer. Dad, you can't keep fighting us. I'm not fighting anyone. You already live here. I smiled. Living here doesn't make me incompetent. His jaw tightened. You've changed. No, I answered quietly. I finally opened my eyes. I pushed every document back across the table. I'm not signing anything. They left angry. The moment they walked out, Nurse Emily, who had witnessed the conversation from the hallway, stepped inside. They weren't asking about your health, she said softly. They never do. She hesitated before speaking again. I've worked here for 12 years. I looked at her. I've learned something. What? You can tell who truly loves their parents. Ow! They ask if they're comfortable. She paused. The others ask where the paperwork is. Her words stayed with me. Over the next month, Michael rarely called unless money was involved. Dad, the house is sitting empty. I'm paying someone to maintain it. That's wasting money. It's my money. Dad, No. Meanwhile, Sarah visited every Saturday without fail. She brought homemade meals. She read books aloud because she knew my eyesight wasn't as good as it used to be. She never mentioned inheritance. She only asked one question every visit. Are they treating you well? That was love. One afternoon, she looked unusually nervous. Dad, yes. I found out something. What happened? She handed me several printed emails. Michael had accidentally sent them to an old family email account Sarah still had access to. I read them slowly. One message from Linda said, "Once we get him declared permanently incapable, we'll sell the house immediately." Another read, "The investments alone should set us up for life." Then came the sentence that made my hand shake. "Hopefully he doesn't live another 10 years. I don't want to wait that long." I read it twice, then a third time. I wasn't angry anymore. I was heartbroken. My own son had replied beneath it, "Just be patient. Once everything's transferred, we'll finally have the life we deserve." Not one word about missing me. Not one word about my happiness. Only money. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry." I smiled sadly. "Don't apologize for someone else's choices." That evening I made one phone call. "My will stays exactly as we discussed," I told my solicitor, "and I'd like you to prepare something else." "I understand. I think it's finally time. It will be ready." Over the following weeks, Michael became increasingly aggressive. He called constantly. "Why won't you cooperate? I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. You're being manipulated by Sarah." "No, she's after your money." I laughed for the first time in weeks. The irony is unbelievable. Then came the annual family reunion. Normally I skipped it. This year Michael insisted I attend. "It'll cheer you up." I knew exactly why he wanted me there. He wanted everyone to see me as a helpless old man. When I arrived, conversation stopped. Some relatives looked uncomfortable. Others avoided eye contact. Michael stood up holding a glass. "I just want everyone to know we've sacrificed so much caring for Dad." Several relatives applauded. I nearly laughed. Caring for me? They had abandoned me inside a nursing home and visited twice a month. Michael continued. "It's been financially difficult." Financially difficult? He hadn't spent a single pound of his own money on me. Everything came from my accounts. Then Linda spoke. "We're doing everything we can." That was enough. I slowly stood. I'd like to say something. The room became silent. Michael smiled confidently. He thought I was about to thank him. Instead, I reached into my jacket. I received copies of some interesting emails. His smile disappeared instantly. Linda turned pale. I handed printed copies to every relative at the nearest table. Within seconds, faces changed. Shock, disbelief, disgust. One cousin whispered, "They actually wrote this?" Another covered her mouth. My uncle read aloud. "Hopefully he doesn't live another 10 years." The room exploded. "What is wrong with you?" Someone shouted at Michael. "That's your father." Linda tried grabbing the papers. "It's out of context." Sarah calmly replied. "Read the rest." They did. Every message, every plan, every conversation about selling my home before I was even gone, every cruel joke, every calculation. Michael's face turned bright red. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I answered. "You never wanted a father. You wanted an inheritance." Then my solicitor walked into the hall. Michael froze. "What is he doing here?" The solicitor smiled politely. "Mr. Harold asked me to attend." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. As many of you know, Harold updated his will. Michael's eyes lit up. For one brief second, he actually looked excited. The solicitor opened the document. I'll summarize. The family home has been donated to a veterans housing charity after Harold's passing. Gasps filled the room. All rental properties have been placed into a charitable trust that funds scholarships for trade apprentices. Michael looked ready to collapse. The investment portfolio has been divided. He swallowed hard. 85% goes to Sarah. Sarah stared in complete shock. "I don't want." I smiled. "I know, which is exactly why you deserve it." The solicitor continued. "The remaining 15% has been placed into a medical research foundation in Eleanor's memory." Michael interrupted. "What about me?" The solicitor looked directly at him. "You receive £1." The room became completely silent. Michael blinked. £1. Correct. Linda screamed. This is insane. The solicitor calmly read the final paragraph. To my son Michael, I leave £1, not because I forgot you, but because I remember everything. May it remind you that greed costs far more than honesty ever will. Nobody spoke. Even the air felt heavy. Michael turned toward me. Dad, please. It was the first time he called me Dad without asking for money. You can't do this. I already did. I made mistakes. You made choices. We're family. I nodded. Family doesn't count the days until someone dies. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry. I believed he regretted something. Not losing me. Losing everything. Within weeks, the emails spread throughout the extended family. Friends stopped trusting Michael. Business opportunities disappeared after people learned how he'd treated his own father. His reputation collapsed under the weight of his own actions. That was karma. Not because I destroyed his life, because he destroyed it himself. 6 months later, I moved out of Rosewood. Not because Michael brought me home, because I bought a beautiful cottage overlooking a quiet lake. Sarah visited every weekend, just as she always had. Only now we spent our afternoons fishing, drinking tea on the porch, and laughing the way Eleanor would have wanted. The scholarship fund helped dozens of young apprentices start careers they could never have afforded. The Veterans Housing Charity transformed my old home into a place where former servicemen and women could rebuild their lives. Every Christmas, I received letters from families whose lives had changed because of those donations. Those letters became worth more than any fortune I ever earned. As for Michael, I heard he still tells people I turned the family against him. Maybe that's easier than admitting the truth. The truth is simple. Money never ruined my family. Greed did. And sometimes the greatest inheritance a parent can leave isn't wealth. It's a lesson their children will never forget.